It was one of the boldest and most sophisticated heists ever pulled off in South Africa. On the night of March 25, 2006, a group of heavily men, dressed in police uniforms and carrying military-grade stormed a restricted cargo area of Johannesburg's Tambo International Airport. In less than 25 minutes, they vanished with over 100 million rand, equivalent to $20 million, in foreign and local currency. No fired. No one was hurt. But the echoes of that night revealed something darker. A vast web of corruption, insider collusion, and a criminal syndicate operating within the very system meant to protect it. Tambo International Airport isn't just any airport. It's the beating heart of South Africa's air traffic and the busiest airport on the continent. Cargo planes land here with everything from diamonds to cash and gold. Behind the scenes, billions pass through in sealed containers, some under tight watch, others under blind trust. In 2006, that trust was about to be shattered in 25 silent minutes. At that time, the airport's security was dangerously weak. Surveillance cameras were outdated or didn't cover blind spots. Many employees shared access badges or left restricted doors propped open. Guards rotated often, and some were poorly trained. No one suspected that the very people meant to protect the money might be watching it for other reasons. The cargo sector at the airport was especially vulnerable. Money shipped from foreign banks often sat for hours before it was picked up. Staff in customs and logistics knew exactly what planes carried, and when they landed, police had access, but so did airline workers, cleaners, and contractors. With the right contacts, almost anyone could learn where the cash was. For years, smaller thefts went unnoticed or unreported. A few missing packages, a couple of bribed guards, nothing too loud. But it built a pattern, and that pattern showed one thing. The inside was wide open. This wasn't just an airport, it was a puzzle waiting to be solved by the wrong hands. In late 2005, someone began putting that puzzle together. It started with a whisper. A South African Airways cargo flight was scheduled to land in March 2006 with a huge load of cash from the UK. But someone leaked that information, and it didn't go far before reaching the ears of criminals. That leak was the spark that lit the fuse. By November 2005, the plan was already in motion. People within SAA and ACSA had shared flight times, cargo contents, and security rotations. Some were paid, others threatened, but all played a role. The robbers knew they couldn't hit the cargo later. It had to be taken as it landed. That meant intercepting it between the runway and the storage vault. The gang behind this wasn't new to crime. They were former robbers, ex-military, and men who knew how to move fast and disappear. But they weren't enough on their own. They needed help from the inside. Airport staff who controlled doors, knew security codes, and could stay quiet. They got that help easily. Cleaning crews, baggage handlers, and even some in airport police were part of the circle. Everyone had a job to do, no matter how small. The insiders would ensure certain doors were unlocked, radios left off, and schedules quietly changed. In return, they would get a cut once the job was done. To them, it was just business. One man, a parking controller named Musa, played a key role. He was told to position the target aircraft close to Gate 1, a gate near a restricted exit. With the aircraft parked just a few meters from the secure gate, the robbers could get in and out in minutes. Musa made it happen without raising any alarms. His reward would come later, in cash. The gang also knew appearances mattered. They needed to blend in, not break in. That meant getting real police uniforms, sirens, and blue lights. A fake police van and a white Ford Focus were chosen for the job. Both cars were prepped to look official enough to pass through airport gates without questions. They didn't just throw the plan together on the weekend. Every move was rehearsed down to the second. They practiced the route, timed how long it would take to load the cash, and made sure there were no surprises. The night of the heist was chosen carefully. Staffing would be low, and the schedule quiet. They were ready. The goal wasn't chaos, it was speed and silence. No fire, no panic, just in and out before anyone could respond. And that's exactly what they aimed for. The heist was no longer an idea. It was a scheduled event. By the time March 2006 arrived, everything was in place. The cars were ready, the were loaded, the uniforms were pressed, and the people guarding the money had no idea they'd already been outplayed. It was a calm Tuesday night at Tambo International Airport. Flights had landed, workers were finishing their shifts, and security guards stood by their posts. Nothing seemed out of place. But at exactly 7:20 p.m., two vehicles rolled toward a restricted gate, one a police van, the other a white Ford Focus. Both had flashing blue lights and sirens blaring, mimicking an urgent police escort. To the guards at the gate, the scene looked official. The van carried what looked like uniformed officers. The Ford followed close behind, its windows tinted, its movements steady. There was no reason to suspect anything unusual until the men inside stepped out. Suddenly, the air changed. 15 men climbed out, 5 in full police uniform, the rest dressed in plain dark clothes. All of them were holding AK-47 rifles. They didn't shout, didn't panic, didn't waste time. The guards froze in place as the fake officers walked toward them with purpose. The men in the Ford Focus approached with fake airport ID badges. One guard asked to scan them. Instead of an answer, a rifle was raised. In seconds, the guards were ordered to the ground, disarmed, and surrounded. Not a single bullet was fired. With the security staff neutralized, the robbers moved quickly. They had practiced this many times before. Some stayed at the gate to block access from inside or outside the airport. Others advanced toward Gate 1, where the cash shipment had just arrived. Every step had been planned down to the second. Gate 1 wasn't just another exit. It was the airport's high-value drop zone. It handled cargo that required the most security: gold, diamonds, and cash. That night, a South African Airways plane had landed from London with bags of foreign currency. Those bags were being transferred from the aircraft to a secure vault nearby. But the robbers got there first. The gang moved in with precision. There was no searching or guessing. They went straight to the right containers. It was clear someone inside had told them exactly what to look for. They dragged heavy money bags, some weighing over 2,200 pounds, toward the waiting vehicles. No one was harmed, and no alarms were raised. This wasn't a smash and grab. It was a job carried out with military-level control. The men ignored other cargo and valuables. They didn't try to take anything else. Their mission was focused, timed, and exact. By now, airport workers who might have seen movement were too afraid to speak. Others didn't realize anything was happening at all. That was the power of their disguise. Dressed as police, no one questioned them. Anyone who did was quickly silenced with a look or a gun. Every part of the airport had been studied and exploited. The money was loaded fast. Inside the bags was more than 100 million rand in cash, nearly $20 million at the time. Most of it was in US dollars, packed and sealed in airline containers. The operation was so clean, it left no trace behind. Even the cameras missed most of it. At 7:45 p.m., just 25 minutes after they had arrived, the two vehicles rolled out. They left through the same access point they entered, calm and unnoticed. No police backup had been called. No pursuit followed them. It was over before anyone outside the gate even knew what had happened. When security finally responded, it was too late. The robbers had vanished into the night with one of the largest cash hauls in South African history. Investigators would later call the job surgical in its precision. There were no fingerprints, no faces, and no witnesses willing to talk. It was like they had disappeared. The robbery showed just how broken airport security had become. These weren't just criminals, they were professionals who knew everything about their target. From the route of the plane to the timing of the guards, nothing had been left to chance. And that level of knowledge could only come from the inside. This wasn't a robbery, it was an operation. By the next morning, chaos had fully taken over Tambo International Airport. What had started as a quiet night shift turned into a crime scene that shook the entire nation. Police scrambled to understand how such a clean and fast operation had taken place under their noses. Surveillance footage was reviewed over and over, revealing just how calm and methodical the robbers had been. The realization hit hard: This wasn't just a lucky heist. It was carefully planned by people who knew every weakness in the system. The South African Police Service didn't waste time. Within hours, the elite Hawks unit was activated, and border controls were placed on high alert. That same day, 2 Zimbabwean nationals were stopped at the Beitbridge border trying to flee the country. Hidden in their car were AK-47 rifles, ammunition, and 3 million rands in cash. It was the first real break in the case, and the signs were clear. Someone inside had helped them know exactly what to take and where to run. As investigators dug deeper, suspicions inside the airport started to grow. Within 72 hours of the robbery, 3 senior AXA managers were arrested. All 3 had been working the night of the heist, had unrestricted access to key areas, and understood flight schedules down to the minute. The evidence pointed to them as guides, directing the robbers straight to the valuable cargo. Their aviation licenses were quickly revoked, and AXA launched an urgent internal investigation to limit the damage. But the story of insider betrayal went back even further than most people knew. Paul O'Sullivan, once the head of security at AXA, had sounded the alarm over a decade earlier. In 2003, he had publicly warned about growing corruption inside the airport. He claimed criminal networks were building influence among police, customs, and airport workers. For his honesty, he was pushed out by AXA, accused of creating conflict, and silenced. But after the heist, his warnings suddenly looked like prophecy. O'Sullivan returned to the spotlight with force. Speaking to the press, he made one bold statement. This was an inside job. According to him, it wasn't just a few rogue managers. It was a web involving cleaners, baggage handlers, police officers, and immigration officials. He believed the entire operation relied on people who were already trusted within the system. His claims sparked national outrage and led to pressure on AXA to clean the house. In response, O'Sullivan filed a 200 million rands defamation lawsuit, accusing AXA of ruining his name instead of listening to his warnings. As the police recovered stolen cash, relief swept through the public, but it didn't last. About 90 million rands were tracked and seized, most of it found in stash houses and vehicles linked to suspects. The money was taken to the Benoni police station, where it was to be audited and held as evidence. But before that audit could even begin, 25 million rands vanished from the evidence room. It was a robbery inside a police station. No broken locks, no security footage, and no one held accountable. The news of the second theft sent a new wave of anger across South Africa. How could the same money be stolen again, this time from within police walls? It was another sign that corruption wasn't just at the airport, it was everywhere. Investigators launched yet another inquiry, but no real progress was made. To this day, not one person has been arrested for the disappearance of the 25 million rands. The fallout from the OR Tambo heist wasn't just about the money. It exposed cracks that ran deep through security, leadership, and trust in law enforcement. People began to question who was really protecting them and who was just waiting for their cut. For a country already struggling with crime and corruption, the heist became a symbol, not just of what criminals could take, but of what was already lost. The trial of the OR Tambo heist, suspects quickly turned into a national embarrassment. It started with great media attention, flashing lights, and promises of swift justice. But inside the courtroom, everything moved painfully slow. For 6 long years, the case barely moved forward. More than 50 delays followed, each one chipping away at public confidence. Judges blamed poor preparation, missing documents, and absent lawyers. But beneath it all, there were signs of something darker. Witnesses were being threatened, and key testimonies vanished overnight. The legal system seemed trapped in fear and confusion. Prosecutors struggled to build momentum, and those watching from the outside began to lose hope that justice would ever be done. Over those 6 years, 57 people took the witness stand. They included airport employees who had been on duty, police officers involved in the initial investigation, and private security experts with ties to the aviation sector. But as each testified, the threats surrounding the case grew. Stories surfaced of intimidation behind the scenes, Some witnesses refused to show up again, too scared to speak. And then came the killings. 5 eyewitnesses were during the trial. One was gunned down on his way to court. Another was found in his car just days before he was set to testify. These weren't random. They felt like cleanups. Someone was making sure certain people stayed quiet. That fear spread through the courtroom. Even judges and lawyers began looking over their shoulders. One of the accused was already behind bars, serving 20 years for a previous. The timing raised suspicion. Was his earlier crime linked to silencing witnesses for this very heist? 2 others on trial were no strangers to violence either. They were already serving life sentences for armed robberies. Those robberies had targeted G4S security trucks, the same company involved in airport cash transport. It was clear these men were professionals, and they weren't afraid to. After years of dragging feet and mounting fear, a verdict finally came. Of the original 15 suspects, only 6 were convicted. The rest were either dead or vanished without a trace. Police believed 3 were the very night of the heist, likely double-crossed by their own. Others seemed to melt into thin air. Maybe they escaped. Maybe someone helped them. No one knew for sure. The 6 men who stood trial to the end were each given 20-year prison sentences. But for many watching, it didn't feel like justice. Too many questions were left hanging. Too many bodies piled up with no answers. And the money, most of it was still gone. Of the 200 million rands stolen, only around 90 million rands was ever found. The rest had vanished into the shadows, and even that recovered amount didn't stay safe for long. After being stored at the Benoni police station, 25 million rands went missing again. The vault was emptied with no signs of forced entry. No one was arrested. No footage was released. It was like the robbery had repeated itself, this time from within the police. People wanted answers. Who planned the second theft? How did it happen under police protection? Was someone paid off to look the other way? The silence that followed was louder than any official statement. It made it hard to believe the case had ended. In many ways, it hadn't. Then came the bigger questions, ones that no court dared to touch. Who at the top helped this heist go through? Was there political backing? Was someone powerful protecting the thieves? Paul O'Sullivan, the former security boss, had said it years earlier. This was an inside job, and yet no senior officials ever stood trial. Not one political figure was called to testify. Years later, the Tambo heist still echoes through South Africa's justice system. It exposed deep cracks, corruption, fear, and a system unable to protect its own. The court case ended with a few men in prison. But the truth? That never walked into the courtroom. It stayed outside, buried with the locked in vaults or spent in secret. Justice may have been served on paper, but for the country, the scars remain. The heist didn't just rob cash, it robbed trust, and that's a debt that may never be repaid. The government's response was immediate and loud. Then Minister of Transport Jeff Radebe promised a full overhaul of airport security. 100 million rands was set aside for the upgrades. New CCTV cameras were installed, and more police officers were placed inside and around the airport. Every employee now needed to pass strict background checks and carry upgraded ID badges just to access key zones. But the money spent didn't erase the cracks. In 2017, a second major heist shocked the country, almost as bold as the first. This time, 3 armed men got away with over 20 million rands. The plan followed the same pattern: help from inside, precise timing, and an easy escape. It was a clear message: the reforms hadn't worked. The 2017 heist hit even harder because it proved nothing had really changed. Airport security looked stronger on paper, but inside, the rot was still there. Old loopholes were still open, and corrupt workers still had access. People realized that if the same crime could happen twice, then the threat wasn't just the criminals, it was the system itself. Confidence in airport safety collapsed. Media reports started calling Tambo a criminal playground. Headlines screamed about inside jobs and failed reforms. The public lost faith not only in airport security but in law enforcement too. People no longer trusted that cargo was safe, or that the staff behind the scenes weren't part of the next job. For South African Airways and AXA, the damage was deeper than financial. The legacy of the heist became one of fear, doubt, and exposed weakness. It showed how money, when paired with inside access, could slip past every barrier. People started asking harder questions. How could millions vanish twice without a trace? Why weren't more employees held responsible? If these crimes happened under heavy surveillance, what else was happening unseen? The silence around these answers was deafening. More than a decade later, the ghosts of the heist still haunt the airport. None of the missing millions from the first robbery were ever recovered. The robbers who vanished that night were never caught. Rumors said some escaped the country, others were and a few lived under false names. No one could prove any of it, but the money never came back. Even worse, many of the airport insiders who were believed to be involved were never arrested. Some quietly resigned, others stayed in their jobs. The system protected itself, but not the truth. Those who remained loyal to the code of silence were never punished, and that silence spoke volumes. The heist revealed more than a broken airport. It revealed a broken system. It exposed how trust can fall apart from the inside, how power, money, and fear can twist even honest jobs into tools for crime. And it left behind a lesson no one wanted to admit, that sometimes the people guarding the gates are the ones opening them. The airport got new cameras, new locks, and new guards, but the real problem was never fully removed. That's what made this crime so dangerous. It wasn't just a robbery. It was a blueprint, one that others could copy, and did. The 2017 heist proved that corruption wasn't beaten. It just got better at hiding. To this day, the full truth is missing. Just like the cash. No final report explained where it all went. No honest answers were given about how deep the inside help went. All we're left with is the outline of a perfect crime, so well planned, so carefully executed, and so successful, it might never truly be solved. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.